my computer says 6 o'clock. We are officially in session. And for comment period, there's a presentation.
I'd just like to take a quick second here and introduce a new member to the PUD family. This is Melinda Evans. She has come and joined our family. She comes to us with many years of administrative support in the healthcare industry, and she's been in the area since 1980. Married, has 3 adult children and 4 soon to be 5 grandchildren. And,
wow.
Yeah, I wanted to introduce her to you. I'm going to be hard questions.
Welcome, Melinda. It's a great opportunity to chat with you today, and very glad that she's here. She's working in our customer service area.
Very good. Good. Nice to meet you. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Okay, additions or deletions to the agenda, are there any? Hearing none. Old business? Any discussion there? Hearing nothing. Consent agenda. We need a motion to accept it.
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second. Any questions or any discussion?
Greg, was that you that seconded? Or Roger?
Roger said.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passed unanimously. New business, consideration and adoption for resolution 24-2021 in the matter of adopting governmental certificate. Oh,
Division update.
division updates. Thank you. I was trying to go as fast as we did last month.
He was gonna say some time.
In other words, keep it short. Keep it short. Well, good evening. I do have a short report for you tonight. Just not a lot of photo selections. I didn't put a slideshow together this month, but so I'll talk to you a little bit about what each of the departments has been doing. The engineering and operations groups installed a new regulator bank out at the Ty Valley substation. So the regulators are what ensures that the voltage we deliver stays constant regardless of what VPA's voltage does. And so that was the last piece of finishing that Ty Valley substation project that Paul Titus had been working on. So that's done, and we're looking forward to closing out that work order. It was hard. It was material delays like everyone's facing today. That's why it took so long. And then kind of around the same time, we discovered a transmission switch on the 69 kV line outside of the Ty Valley substation, which has a problem with one of the elements being able to close or open. And so we're looking into solutions for repairing or replacing that. A couple of the larger projects completed this last month were the service out at the concrete plant out here was an overhead service, and we've converted that to underground with the help of the owner, and also replaced the service out at McDonald's.
Have to use any dynamite?
What's that?
Have to use any dynamite?
We did not have to use any dynamite, no.
That's amazing.
So it was a good month. Engineering has been supporting the design of the Dallas Fish Facility, their juvenile fish sampling facility for Power Resources. They're also specifying some additional reclosers for wildfire mitigation for next year to be installed next year. We're kind of getting a head start on it because, again, there's long lead times on all this hardware. We're talking like 6 months or so. So we'd like to get that done soon. For the city, I think I've mentioned this in the past, that the city wants to underground the utilities in the downtown area, much of it, and that we we're putting together a request for proposals to do a feasibility study to basically determine high-level costs for completing the work and phasing what the project would look like, what kind of phases it would be done in. What kind of time frame, what kind of construction windows we'd have to work with, those sorts of things. So we've completed the RFP internally. I just sent it over to the city manager today for their review, and we'll get that advertised here as soon as I get comments back from the city. And so it's something where we or evaluating the responses of these engineering firms and then making a recommendation to the city for which engineer to work with. So it's kind of a partnership.
Just for a nuance there, we have an interest in understanding whether undergrounding versus overhead is appropriate also. I just don't want to make it sound that it's the city's desire, it's mutually beneficial.
It is mutually. I mean, it's aging infrastructure downtown that is going to need to be addressed one way or the other. The easy button is to keep it overhead, but it sure makes the downtown look a lot nicer if we can get it underground. However, that's a big undertaking. So the primary output, as I mentioned, of this feasibility study that I think the city is looking for is how much is it going to cost? Because you may or may not have heard that there is some infrastructure money becoming available from the federal government, and you know, so they'll look for a piece of that, I assume, to try to offset the cost.
So how are the costs going to be shared? Or are they going to be shared between us and?
It's a good question. To be determined. To be determined. I mean, as I mentioned, it's aging infrastructure that needs to be replaced anyhow. So we could make a case. A case could be made that we should cover the cost of replacing the infrastructure as is, and then maybe the city would. You know, this is all very hypothetical, so don't take me at my word here. But you know, some understanding will have to be made, but that we would pay for potentially the cost of replacement as is, you know, in kind replacement. Additional costs would have to come from elsewhere.
It certainly is an issue that will be negotiated. I think
Right.
it's fair to say.
It is.
I don't want to acknowledge at this point what our position would be until we have an opportunity to see exactly what the engineering studies come back with. The city's got some problems. They've got, and I think I mentioned this to you at a prior meeting. Normally, the alleys where our infrastructure are owned by the public body as a part of the right-of-way. In a number of instances downtown, the city doesn't own it, the alley. It's owned by the property owners who have the buildings on each side. So this is a little more complicated than baking bread, I guess, probably. How complicated it is, I think we don't know until we get these feasibility studies back, let alone the cost issue on it. But this is really the starting point of this process, which may be a number of years, I think, if it comes to fruition, and it happens.
Yeah, based on the city's tolerance for you know, traffic interruption and all on those sorts of things, I could see that the construction itself would take a few years.
Yeah.
And so, as you mentioned, this is very early. This is just to see, is the project even feasible? Can we really even do it? And if so, then we progress into further design stages.
But, and they, I think, want to know whether it's $100 million project or a $30 million.
Right. It's exactly. These are high-level estimates.
Yeah. So.
And then on a smaller scale, we've got a couple of informal requests for proposal out for engineering support for a couple of issues. We've got one issue we have in our system and one situation where we just need some additional engineering support. The one place where we do have an issue currently is there's quite a bit of sawdust at the West 2nd Street substation from the neighboring wood products facility, and we're concerned about what kind of safety impact that might have to our staff. It's very the surface in a substation is designed very intentionally to minimize hazards to staff, essentially, if there were ever a fault in the substation. And so we're concerned that the sawdust may interfere with that. And so we're going to have an outside entity look at that and give us a kind of a report on their assessment and then figure out how to solve that problem. So, in addition, the team has been supporting with the O&M, supporting the O&M budgeting process, and we're also going to make a revision to the capital plan, the kind of the preliminary version that I presented to you a couple of months ago. Finance has decided they can explain it to you later during the budget presentation in the coming, in future months, what they've done. But essentially, we're going to account for things a little bit differently. So I'm going to revise the capital plan and represent it to you at that time as well. A couple of us in the room actually here that are newer to the organization or to this role attended a 3-part series on labor relations. We do have labor relations coming up next month, or next year, sorry. And I don't know what part we'll play necessarily, who's going to do what, but I at least want to be able to understand how to better interact with the bargaining unit. As far as contractors, tree trimming is ongoing as it was presented to you last month. And we also have our pole inspection contractor called Osmos that is out in the field. We have to inspect a certain percentage of our poles every year by PUC regulations. And so we have a contractor that does that and also checks for safety violations and things of that nature. And then also in operations, we have his role as a groundman right now. Essentially, he's not a lineman or an apprentice yet, but he will be entering the apprenticeship in October. So we're excited about that as that kind of moves along. It's retirement planning, basically. We have a couple guys who will be retiring in the next couple of years, so we're looking forward to getting some apprentices engaged so that they can fill those shoes. So that's really engineering and operations. And then just a general comment about system reliability. It doesn't always show up exactly in the board. You know, we don't always print the metrics at this point. I'm trying to think of a good way to present them to you, but just for the record, July was our most reliable month this year so far. So happy to see that as far as all the standard indexes go. On the IT side, we are currently developing and almost are completed a cybersecurity policy that we'll present to you for approval next month. This will address the things that we will have in place, or either do have in place or will have in place in order to protect the organization from cybersecurity threats. And then also as part of that, there's going to be a new acceptable use policy, basically, that all employees will sign that essentially, so it confirms, it explains what we can and can't do. I mean, these are things people are already following, you know, just because we're professionals, but it's going to be in writing, and this will help mitigate, you know, risks associated with cybersecurity threats. One other thing that we have planned is to do in the coming months to establish a company-wide, organization-wide cybersecurity training on at least an annual basis. That will be mandatory for all employees. We've also set up an agreement. I'm going to be intentionally vague because we're on the record here, but we've set up an agreement with a government agency that is scanning our information systems from the outside, basically, continuously, looking for vulnerabilities in our system, and they provide us regular reports on any threats or vulnerabilities that they identify, which they have identified none yet. But that's an ongoing thing that was a new addition last month. And then we also have, on a physical security side, installed new security cameras, and we completed that project last week. So we've been doing some security upgrades at the utility, and those cameras were one of the final pieces. So that's really all I've got for you this month. Anyone have any questions?
Jeff, I do.
Yeah.
Is Harvey listening to us? Okay, my question has to do with risk management, which I know you've been involved with, and you said a sentence that piqued my interest, and that was the transportation issues and the delays which we could have. And what I'm thinking is where that is in relation to priority, that maybe that should be a higher priority because we're not through with this for probably another year, maybe 2 years. And what would the matrix look like if we can't get poles or something else? What have we done to mitigate that?
I'm glad you brought that up. And so supply chain issues are definitely something that Harvey's addressed in his risk analysis, and I'll let him talk more about that. I can talk about my division specifically and say that we, as a practice, stock at a level that we can take care of ourselves and also neighboring utilities to some extent if we had to. We're, I don't want to say you know, we're not flush necessarily, but we're well stocked for things that may arise. And so the things that are causing problems now are more project related. When we order things that are out of the ordinary, where we would expect a lead time of maybe 10, 12 weeks, is now double or triple that. And so it's not the things like poles that are getting us right now, and transformers. So I feel pretty comfortable with that right now.
The last one I just watched a documentary on is the newest shortage will be rubber, and all of it, what that entails from tires to whatever. And it's an ongoing process, Jeff, as you.
Yeah, everything is connected.
Exactly.
And we're finding that out the hard way. But from a risk standpoint, being able to recover the system, I think we're in good shape.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions? No. Thank you. Finance and risk.
It may be Harvey, it may be Lana. And if you're
No, it's
talking
Lana.
early- All right.
I'm giving Harvey a moment to see if he can get connected, if his sound will work.
Yeah,
Lana, why
can
don't
you hear
go
me?
ahead?
Yeah. Are you still in Iceland?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Turn off computer audio.
We can hear you, Harvey.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, you've got it, Lana.
Oh, okay. Well, hello.
Remember, I gave you the script.
Okay, I thought I was backup, so okay, I'm ready. Here we go. We have sent the 2022 preliminary budget to EES for the COSA review, and for them to look at and do a FY22 rate evaluation based on our 2022 budget. You will see the preliminary budget in our October 5th board meeting. So that will be the first hearing and presentation of our budget that we're going to propose. We're looking at providing the first overall rate recommendations by EES at the October 5th board meeting. So that'll be the initial analysis and findings of the COSA. Again, that's the October board meeting. In addition, there will be the presentation of our risk inventory. So that will happen as well, October 5th. So you'll hear the newly prioritized risks that we've identified, and present all those risks and potential issues in the mitigation plan that we have at this point to the board as well in October. So that's pretty much the finance update at this point. Any questions?
I don't think there's any questions here, Lana. Go ahead.
Okay, that's all I had with regards to the finance update.
Okay, our resources.
What? That'll be a dollar.
It's on silent. It was, I turned the sound down. I didn't believe you though.
Isn't that a dollar?
They were just giving an
It was a
intro
dollar
first.
30 years ago, I knew it should be $100.
I have a lot of chit
Say, I didn't set that soundtrack for my presentation. I'll have to work on it though. That's a possibility.
Weird.
Maybe October. So I wanted to start with the hydro plants, give you an overview of how things are going. Both plants continue to run at very high capacity factors over 99.9% availability since their maintenance outages. Dalles Fishway project has exceeded its 5 megawatt target, which is this red band here. The bottom is 5 megawatts. Blue line is the output, so it's just nailing it for the last month. We've had very high spot power prices since April. I think I've mentioned this in previous meetings, and the Dalles Fishway collects revenue based on these spot prices, and that's averaged more than $170,000 per month since April. So doing really good. $170,000 per month. The Dalles Fishway resource is was in play for 2022 calendar year, and so we went through a formal offering process that resulted in sale of the output to Brookfield Renewable Energy, and the revenues from that sale will be approximately $2.1 million per year for both 2022 and 2023. That is nearly double the annual revenues compared to the last 7 years. The deal bundles energy, RECs, and transmission products, which are all sold as a package to Brookfield. Projects at the Dalles Fishway include, first, the juvenile fish sampling facility that Jeff mentioned. We're teaming up with engineering to construct that. That was one that we went through in formal invitation to bid. All of the bids came in much higher than our budget, and so we've picked through it and value engineered a lot of the components, and we believe we can bring it in a few $100,000 under budget, maybe, crossing my fingers. The other project at the Dalles Fishway is a change in the O&M responsibility for the trash rack, which is the rack that screens debris and larger fish from entering our project. And that is pending an amendment to the exhibit with the Corps of Engineers. So at the McNary Fishway, which is the next slide, again, the blue line is the output, and the red line is my target for, output. It's slightly below the red line, but not to worry. It's, almost 10 megawatts. And I will say this, the runner replacement that we completed in 2017 has proven its value through improved efficiency and availability of the unit. Like the Dalles Fishway, we've had very few scheduled or forced outages after that runner replacement project. And that's a really good change. The efficiency, we are getting 7 to 10% more power out of it on a continuous basis. Jim?
Kurt, is the difference between the Dalles and McNary just the difference in net head at each facility?
Yeah, the Corps of Engineers operations have a big impact, and you can see it particularly here. We noticed this is in July. The Corps of Engineers was ramping the main dam generating units up and down diurnally, selling power to California to regulate for sunsets and so forth. And then they also had some spill conditions that went along with that. That is, they regulated both the spill and the output. And that caused tailwater encroachment, which decreased our output during this period. Spill ended September 1st, so we've really smoothed out at that point. McNary sees similar net head issues. The light blue line is the net head, and you'll see that the power output really does track with whatever the Corps is doing that affects net head. But it's a lot better that than being subject to the hydrology of the entire Columbia River Basin. We get constant water flow. It's the net head that varies. The main project that we have at the McNary Fishway is the construction of new ingress and egress facilities. The designs for an externally mounted elevator and staircase are currently pending before the Corps of Engineers for approval. We've we're hoping to have completion of that by late summer 2022. And we've got 90% design drawings, which is nearly ready for construction.
So that's gonna happen, that elevator that you just referred to?
The elevator is definitely going to happen. We're going to have a conversation with Clickitat about the rest. I have to have core approval, cost estimates, project schedule, and then we can talk with them. BPA rate case final ROD was issued at the end of July. You probably heard it in various newsletters. The record of decision accepted various changes to BPA business practices, reserve funding policies, and tariff values. Tariff values were the ones that had the most concern to Power Resources, but the current estimates in our budget model indicate that approximately 0.5% annual rate increase will occur with the combined purchase power and transmission rates compared to the last rate period. So we're really not getting hit in this upcoming rate period, which starts October 1st. We have the scheduling agent agreement next. At the August meeting, the board passed Resolution 18-2021 authorizing staff to negotiate a scheduling agent agreement with Portland General Electric. We worked with counsel at Cable Houston, my staff, and Portland General to develop a near final draft of the scheduling agent agreement. I expect the final executable draft will be provided by Portland General by next week. And then in parallel with that, Power Resources staff have been working through technical implementation deals to ensure a successful go live by September 30th, which is the pre-scheduled date for October 1st. So got some really crunch deadlines ahead of us right now, but everything's looking good. We have offered surplus Bonneville Power Administration wind and hydro RECs in the 2019 through 2021 vintage. That is, we've offered to sell them. So we posted it to a number of parties that trade in renewable energy credits. Bids are due September 23rd, and the potential revenue should be somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000. So that'll be a nice off-budget revenue item. My last item is a solar project. Some of you are familiar with the NEMS group and have participated in board meetings, resource management committee meetings. The group's now called NRU Power Services. PUD participated in a specific resource investigation of a proposed solar project north of Richland, Washington called Ruby Flat Solar. NEMS prepared a cost-benefit analysis to provide benchmarks for the cost of solar photovoltaic projects and an opportunity for the members to participate and purchase energy from the project. It was it would be a 50 megawatt AC peak output with battery storage. Remarkably, that boils down to 8.89 average megawatts. For McNary Fishway, that's 10. So it is in relative terms. Cost of energy from the project from the developer would be $40 per megawatt hour, escalating 1% per year with a 20-year term of the PPA. After we factor in BPA resource support services, transmission services, scheduling overhead, the levelized cost of energy from the project would be delivered here at a cost of $80 per megawatt hour. So that would be shaped and flattened for our use and our load. I apologize for the text being small up there, I misjudged. The product would have no carbon emissions. Okay, so there's one plus, and another is that it would include RECs, renewable energy credits. So it has a little bit more value compared to a market purchase. And what we're seeing here is this is the cost of energy in 2022 if I went out and bought it today for the whole year, all hours. and what does that say, $58 a megawatt hour? It's going up very rapidly. It could catch that $80 number, or it could crash. We think it's going to crash, but and then down here, if we look at 2023, even other out years, those prices are quite a bit lower, but still astronomically high, because the price histories going back into 2018 are all well below, you know, the $40 per megawatt hour, and mostly down in the $30 ranges. So a market purchase at $45 to $50 per megawatt hour would not include environmental attributes and could face fees for carbon emissions. Northern Wasco has no obligation to continue its participation in this Ruby Flats solar project. We just wanted to be involved so we would know on a specific resource what the cost of that energy would be if we had it delivered here. So that's where we stand right now with Ruby Flats, and I just wanted to give you a background, and you know, maybe in future discussions we'll talk more about it or not. It's really not a feasible resource for our diversified load, but we have other needs which may make the project.
Do you anticipate that being lowered down the line with better battery technology?
It's possible. It's one of these things where, you know, people will delay on, you know, buying an electric vehicle, because I know that 2 years from now there's going to be a much better car for the same price, right? I think we really don't have a strong need for this project for diversified load service. We do have a need for it for large loads, and for that to work out, we would be looking at, you know, coming up with a decision process that involves customers who would pay the cost of the project itself. You know, we wanted to flesh out as much information about these projects as we could. It's also useful for the policy discussions that will no doubt occur going forward. The cost of carbon emissions, what is there somewhere where parties can agree on that, or are we going to be at an impasse? The cost of carbon-free resources. Well, this gives us a benchmark. We know what it costs. There may be ways to reduce that cost of delivered energy. We'd have to go, you know, the next step in feasibility analysis to find out what it is.
Kurt, where is that project in terms of being online?
Oh, they just submitted their generator interconnection request with Bonneville, and they're looking for off-takers. You're familiar with a lot of the wind projects where, you know, it's a chicken and egg problem. They're not going to actually break ground until they have a power purchase agreement.
Because their lender won't give them any money to
break ground. Yeah. So it's this situation that they're facing right now. They're trying to find off-takers, as they're known as.
So how does this project compare in size to what's happening in South County? Do you have any idea?
It's 50 megawatts, although their interconnection request was for 128. So the one in South County, there's two actually. There's Avangrid, and then there's IPA. Avangrid is 300 megawatts, and IPA is 200. So those two are quite a bit larger.
IPA's in Sherman County.
All or partial?
Most of it.
Most. Well, okay.
That's another 550 megawatts?
Well, that would be 500 megawatts total between Avangrid and IPA. Yeah, IPA is the former Summit Wind project. So just east of Doofer.
That's okay.
Yeah. And we've had discussions with them. You know, the big challenge is how do you deal with a variable output power plant, which doesn't produce much in the winter when we have our peak loads. And I want to hand over the projector to Chris Allen, Power Manager, and he's going to go over resource adequacy, which is a topic that you're hearing more about right now, and he'll explain it in the context of Northern Wasco's requirements.
Thanks. Mind if I just stand and talk?
Go ahead.
Okay. Let me know if you can't hear me. So as Kurt had mentioned, I am going to give you a brief overview of some of the more recent information that we've been gathering this summer. It's been kind of the hot topic, and I would imagine that many of you have heard in the various venues that you've been in, something about resource adequacy, Northwest Power Pool. It was even mentioned as of recently in the Public Power Council Members Forum Executive Committee. And so we've just been in quite a bit of time this summer trying to get ourselves familiar with what's coming. So resource adequacy in this context is really about, do we have enough resources to supply power to the load obligation that we have? That's kind of it at a kind of a very high level. The Western Electricity Coordinating Council, who's kind of, across the Western Interconnect is responsible for reliability standards, monitoring, and enforcement. They kind of couch it quite nicely in this quote here, but really what they're getting at is that we're kind of in this paradigm where, carbon policies are changing our fuel mix, right? We're retiring fossil fuel facilities, we're replacing them with variable energy resources, whether it's wind and solar. We are seeing increased frequency and intensity of weather patterns due to climate change, and we're also starting to see, especially in a hydro-dominated region, the effects of the hydrological cycle changing. Maybe not as much now, but there's predictions for it to change in the future. So the fuel sources that we have for hydro may be changing compared to what we've experienced in the past. So the question begs, do we have enough resources to provide power during high demand periods? And, if we start looking to the south of us, whether it be California, seeing, issues here as of late, Texas, there's probably some indications that, we're facing some issues. Some of the regional analysis that's been performed too suggests that we're on the precipice as well. So in light of that, the Northwest Power Pool kicked off a regional effort to bring together people around the region to try to really address this issue and do what we can to really ensure that we have a adequate power supply during this high demand periods.
Chris, one quickie. It seemed, we used to think winter was the big one, and is it pretty much now flipped to what it's agreed it's usually summer now?
I think it depends. If you look at geographically speaking, right, we east and west of like the Cascades, there's differences by region, and so it's one of the benefits of this program is to really try to capture those benefits of diversity. But it really depends on where you're at. As I mentioned, some of the effort is, if you look back kind of in history and look at all the balancing authorities and a lot of their responsibilities across the region, they're kind of fragmented and they're kind of siloed. So we find ourselves not coordinating as well as we should because the impact of one balancing authority has an impact on their neighbor, especially when we're talking about reliability. So this effort really will enhance our coordination and improve our operational visibility, which is a good thing. Also, it provides kind of a consistent standard way of planning and metrics that are used. So we're speaking the same language when we're talking from one balancing authority to the other. That's also, an enhancement. And then, as I mentioned, just the diversity benefits that we get from those resources. If you think about it, that perhaps one participant could be experiencing a shortage, and then another participant that's in a different region might not be, and they could supply power to the person that's short, vice versa. So that's kind of that benefit that they're talking about. I do really apologize, I didn't even think about the display. This is really an eye chart. So I'll just kind of walk through it from, probably left to right. So up in the upper left-hand corner, the steering committee, which now consists of 17 different members that are kind of spread throughout the region. We also have some people, or some entities out of California. They've been really those who have been participating from the very beginning, maybe, giving you resources, both monetarily and also people, to work with the Northwest Power Pool in gathering information and designing the program. We've been moving forward in time into this detailed design phase, which we're just closing out of and entering another phase. And in this detailed design phase, the Northwest Power Pool and the steering committee selected the Southwest Power Pool to come in and help design the program. Now, Southwest Power Pool has been running a resource advocacy program for quite some time now, and so their expertise, I think, has been very helpful in us standing up something similar in our region. We spent a lot of time this summer in this LIFT outreach, which is the Load Information Forum, or excuse me, Load Service Information Forum. So think about that as load serving entities who might become a participant in the future. It was really an outreach by the Northwest Power Pool and BPA to get the information out there, because the program is going to be most impactful if you can get a great number of folks to join it. So the 17 that are here, they're hoping that people will continue to re-up and that more people begin to participate. Phase 3A, which is we're just entering into, or we have been for about a month now, is entering a phase where they're calling it the non-binding forward showing phase. So what that means really is that they've done a bunch of detailed design work already. And now we're entering a phase where we're going to start testing it. So operationally, mechanically, how is this really going to work? And so the non-binding means that because it's testing, there's no penalties for lack of conformance to it. And there is an expectation that you take action based upon the information that comes out of the analysis. BPA has a letter to the region that's out, highlighting the fact that they're likely going to continue participating. They're seeking comment to whether or not people think that they should or shouldn't, and they'll take that into consideration as the administrator makes his decision. Why that's really important, I think, for us is that, at least at this point in time, when we've talked to BPA, we've got some indications that they believe through their analysis that they are contractually obligated to represent load following customers in this program, which we're a load following customer with a wrinkle because of the new large single loads that we have in our service territory as well, which is an element that we're having to work with Bond along to get some clarity around that. As I mentioned, the program really right now is working on this forward showing element of the program. There's also an operational period and then an after the fact period. And these time horizons here represent basically the day of flow and working backwards. So if we look at today, would be the present day. Go back 6 days, and that would be the beginning of the operational period. You go back a couple years or months, 7 months in the past, and that would be kind of in the forward showing horizon. So the idea is that in the forward showing, you're putting your cards on the table, showing, estimating what your load is. Here are the resources that you plan to use to cover that load, and they'll make determinations on whether you're sufficient or not. And then as time moves forward, if there are changes in your assumptions, and you get into this operational environment, which they haven't designed yet, there will be other mechanics in place to help make sure that people are adequate, whether you're able to kind of borrow from a neighbor, obviously you have to pay them, but that's kind of how the mechanics will work out. But that's yet to be determined. As we get into this non-binding forward showing period, they'll be designing the operational environment at that same time. So if we walk through, a bit of a test case, a use case, I guess I would say, is that I had mentioned in the forward showing program, it does provide increased visibility and transparency, about all of the participants, how they look in terms of what their load obligations are, and how many resources that they have available to meet those load obligations. The periods are broken down related to your traditional, winter, summer, spring, fall. But for the purpose of this program and our load profile in the region, we're only talking about the winter and summer periods. And those are marked as binding because once we get into a program where you are in a binding situation, that there are penalties if you do not comply. The period of time for winter is November through March 15. Summer is June 1st through September 15. So there's a kind of broad number of months in there, just in my recollection. And then the forward showing deadlines are marked here as well. And those are the periods where you'd be submitting information to the program operator, and they would be analyzing your information and making a determination whether you're sufficient or insufficient for purposes of the forward showing program. If you're found to be insufficient, you do have a cure period, so it's basically a 2-month period to make good and get resources to cover your position as required by the program. Remember, we're going to be in the summer period. Another busy chart, but I think the takeaway here is for purposes of the forward capacity requirement, for forward showing capacity requirement, it really is the maximum monthly load, your peak load for the period. So if you look at this as a summer period or summer season, you have June, July, August, and September. For this particular case, it would say August is your peak load, and that's what you're obligated to meet for that summer period. On top of that, they would apply a seasonal planning reserve margin. So this is additional amount of coverage that you would need to bring to the table to make sure that you are sufficient to meet your load in the event that you had a peak demand show up. Initial analysis for the participants that are in the program right now, looking at the footprint and the geographical diversity, we're estimating somewhere between 9 and 15% planning reserve margin on top of your forecasted peak load. So to bring that all together, that means we rewrote this equation to say, Northern Wasco County PUD, forward showing capacity requirement is your seasonal peak forecast, plus, or times 1 plus the planning reserve margin. If you remember, 130 was our peak forecast for August. 15% planning reserve margin would be 19.5 megawatts. So in total, we would be responsible to bring enough resources to the table to cover 149.5 megawatts. Now that's just a made-up example taken from Northwest Power Pool's document, so it isn't representing necessarily our load, is to express how it would play out if that was our load. As I mentioned previously, there is a question about how we will be handling the differences between the diversified and the new large single load, just due to the contractual obligations that we have to work through Bonneville on that topic. In terms of what we would be responsible for, perhaps through Bonneville, is that we would have to provide them with 10 years of historical data based on our load, as well, and that's hourly data, as well as estimates of our peak forecast. And there will be likely some back and forth with Bonneville as we're submitting our forecast, is normally what we do to make sure that that information that they're submitting to the Northwest Power Pool represents our utility accurately. We also will be responsible for providing any of the resources that we own, any of the contracts that we have, and perhaps if there's any demand side resources that we also have in our footprint that we might want to offer up to get certified and registered with the program as a means of another resource to cover our capacity. The qualifying capacity resource we've talked about a couple of times here. I'll try to kind of clarify that. Each of these resource types, they will be given and assigned a certain qualifying capacity. And what that means is that for storage hydro, for example, let's say your nameplate capacity is 10 megawatts. Through their analysis, they'll determine of that 10 megawatts, what would they actually allow you to qualify in the program, knowing that you may not necessarily be able to put out 10 megawatts. In particular times of the year, you might only be able to put out 80% of that. So that's what you would be given credit for in the program. Another interesting item here is the customer resources. So to the extent that you have the capability of having controllable DR or behind the meter generating resources, those could also qualify within this program as a resource. So there's a lot to be done to determine if that is something that we even have the capability of doing here. This chart here was meant to try to highlight the QCC for the different types of resources. This first one here is a storage hydropower project broken down by month, and then there is a range of values given the fact that there are multiple entities or participants that have storage hydro in the region, and this would be a range that they have seen or at least calculated based upon their analysis. And then here is a conventional thermal unit, which would be 94 to 99% QCC. Kurt had mentioned the performance of our hydro facilities, quite high. I don't think that they fit in this category of storage hydro. They probably, at least in my estimation, they probably would fit closer into the thermal, maybe the low 90s, but that's something that we would have to work with the Northwest Power Pool on to determine. There's going to be kind of a unique hydro facility. I don't think there's a lot of hydro facilities out there that have that type of.
Chris, what's the conversation been around, like, for example, the 50 megawatt nameplate variable solar plant that we talked about previously? Do they even get 20 megawatts, 20%?
Yeah, so I tried to do some analysis and I couldn't find that in their design document, so it's something we asked ourselves that same question.
Right.
Traditionally, they do get a pretty low QCC. Usually, I think the advocates of those technologies are very traditionally unpleased with the low quantities that they're given. And I expect they will probably follow suit here, but I don't have the number for you right now.
Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So looking forward, we'll continue to engage both the Northwest Power Pool and BPA to really develop those necessary business practices. Again, Bonneville's been very clear about covering the diversified load. We need to understand, their coverage or their part in the new large single loads. I think it makes most sense if we're even responsible for that, and we could feed that through them and we could deliver one package to the Northwest Power Pool. But we need to work with them to determine if that's a reasonable solution. We probably do need to be thinking about what is our participation strategy, whether it's contracts and or the resources that we own. Specifically the contracts, if you're a participant and you've traditionally relied upon unspecified, just a general market purchase that isn't tied to a specific resource, in all likelihood, that might not be sufficient for the program. It's looking like they really want to make sure that the contract that you enter into has a resource backing it, because when you're in a time of extreme duress, if you don't have a resource tied to it, there's a good chance, even though you have a piece of paper that says you have a firm product, it may not be delivered. That's what they really want to try to avoid. Then the last bullet here is work with any of the customers within our service territory to determine if there's any of those load modifying or behind the meter generation that we might be able to leverage as part of this program as well. Sir.
I understand the concept and I like it. How does this coincide or conflict with the VPA contract of 2028 that is we've been working on for years, and it's not settled yet.
As far as the post-2028 contract, you know, I think this is one of those elements in there that is at the forefront of their mind and discussions, because we're not the only customer. I think all of us are in this to say, hey, you know, we've been paying for the federal system, you know, we want to make sure that we have rights to both energy and capacity, you know, within what we've been paying for. So I think this is one of those topical items that within the post-2028 forum we've been talking about. I don't think there was resolution on that, but PPA is very clear that they are aware of the need to address it.
Do you see this happening before the 2028?
But you would have to, I mean, the way that the program's shaping out. Because I think the first forward showing binding season is gonna be in late, I think, November of 2023. So that's where the rubber meets the road. Now, could it change, you know, maybe you implement something for this contract? Could it change for post 2028? The answer is likely. We'll learn.
If anything, just speculate, it's gonna, my view, further articulate the value of the capacity of the federal system has always had, just didn't get any credit for. We're even seeing it now, just for the increase in the value of the output of the Dallas Fishway unit, recognizing that it is a carbon-free resource with a high output factor and a high capacity factor. The market is receiving that value, because it's giving us that information now. And we're still a preference customer that gets that at cost from the federal system, not at value, but at cost. So increase secondary sales for a carbon-free resource. I think there's way more upside to leverage from this and have a reliable product. And for me, not to be cynical, but for all these folks that want to get their variable plant built to get the tax credits, and whether it delivers energy or not, now they get to come pay the piper, because for the rest of us that have to cycle around the system to support them, gotta pay to play, is my takeaway. I defer to the more seasoned professionals in this, but for me, I think this is a good thing, especially again, we're the ones gotta keep the lights on.
Good, thank you.
Good, thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, corporate services. Hello, Cindy.
Hello, how are you?
Is Gentry?
Just a couple updates tonight. I owe you an update on our job description project as it relates to the pay equity policy that you all approved in July. We are making progress. We have learned through our research and through reaching out to peers at other organizations that it's a bit more involved than we originally thought. My dream of simplified job descriptions is out the window. Every one of those categories that we defined in our policy has to have a section on the job description. So we are working at both updating the leveling guide to make sure it also includes all of those sections, but also coming up with some standardized language. It is our opinion that most of those categories you can pick from 5 different sentences or paragraphs or whatever we want to, whatever we end up with, that should cover most of our, most levels, most situations, so that can make the updating of job descriptions a little easier. And we continue to work on a draft of an administrative regulation for the compensation program that'll include a lot of these new things that we're discovering. So that's where that one is. It's moving. Kara's done a phenomenal job of working out a format for the job description. It has gotten significantly longer. We have, she has redesigned the physical requirement section so that it's much easier to utilize, much easier to read, and converts more easily to things like ADA accommodation, disability claims, those kind of things. So really lines up with those forms. So over time, it'll save effort and save a lot of rework and extra work through those processes, and medical leaves and return to works. So the other thing I wanted to give you a very brief update on, last week, the union emailed Roger and I replied. Apparently somebody's not happy that when we separated the 401K and the 457 plan to two different vendors, we can no longer match employee contributions to their 457 by putting money in the 401K. It's not legal, it's not possible. So once we chose to go with two different vendors for the two different plans, that had to change. They are exercising their right to bargain. I have absolutely no idea what it is that they want, but I meet with them tomorrow afternoon for the first meeting,
Who's they?
the union.
So you, meeting with them by yourself?
For this first one. Yes. Both Carl for labor and Jeff for retirement plans are aware. They've been looped in on all of the emails. They've answered a couple of questions for me. The one for Kyle, first off was, okay, how quickly do they, what is a reasonable pace for them to move on this bargaining? Because we are already booked to move the plans on October 1. Of course, the NLRB does not define what's reasonable.
Two people she referred to are the attorneys,
But they're both with Baron Liebman.
Baron Liebman.
So Kyle is who we utilize for labor relations. Jeff is who took over for Iris on the retirement plan. My question to Jeff was kind of what if? What are my timelines? What are my options? We've signed paperwork. We're scheduled to move October 1. In essence, we have a few options, but until I meet with them Thursday and find out what the heck they're thinking.
And this is all stemming from one employee who was not happy with it?
Don't know. This is all stemming from an email from Travis Heffley, the union representative for our bargaining unit back there.
Considering the amount of time, effort, money, and attorneys we've used, what would we have done different not to be in this position?
I don't feel that we've done anything.
I don't know.
Thank you very much.
We haven't done anything wrong. That doesn't
In
change,
my opinion,
I don't wanna
it's,
doesn't change the rules.
Record on an issue that's,
Yeah.
about to be negotiated.
but
So-
it appears that Nationwide is the one that was dragging the teeth from the beginning, correct? No?
I think you're getting some legal advice we need to follow.
All right,
Yeah, this is not the appropriate forum to.
okay.
I'm here to let you know that this has come up, both as the board and as the trustees. I understand you are considering a trustee meeting. If it were me, I'd wait until I at least find out what the union wants before you schedule a trustee meeting.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Question,
Hi.
Fed OSHA vaccination mandate, you're hearing the same stuff I'm hearing.
I'm hearing the same stuff. It's, Fed OSHA, so obviously the president issued the mandate and Fed OSHA gets to define it and gets to write the rules. Fortunately, for us, it does not affect us. It is for employers of 100 employees or more. It could impact contractors. I had asked Roger, other than Trees Inc., do we have contractors that are bigger than 100 employees? I don't know. The reason I had asked the question, and it came to pass, Fed OSHA has decided that the cost of testing and the time for testing is all at the employer's expense every single week for anybody that chooses to not get vaccinated. So it's no longer just employers doing what's right, which is provide the vaccination. Well, everybody's providing the vaccination at cost, but providing the time, the paid time to get the shot, the paid time for a day or two if you have a reaction, be supportive. Now it's, if any employees don't want to get vaccinated, you have to test them every week and all the cost is on you. So whether or not that can be dropped to a lower employee threshold at a state level, I don't know. That was actually one of the what ifs that Kara and I went through on our risk assessment with Harvey, was what if a vaccine mandate comes down? And, I mean, it could have, it's not just about how it impacts us. It's how it impacts our contractors, how it impacts our suppliers, how it impacts everybody that we do business with.
Well, it has a huge impact, and I think obviously it's written that way, to have a huge impact. This is an issue that's going on.
It's a public health matter that has been turned into a political issue.
We're gonna take care of our people first. I just
Yeah.
wanted to clearly state that we know that there's information, noise, a buzz coming from above that could directly impact us. It isn't yet, but we're watching it.
Right, thank you guys.
It's not a long step for it to reach us.
Thank you, Cindy.
Mhm.
Thank you. Okay, customer service, key accounts.
Just want to let it be known that I don't have anything in front of me. That doesn't mean I'm so prepared that it's all memorized up above. It's just I put it all on a dashboard so you guys can see it. So that's kind of my trick around that.
We can see it.
If you
Yeah, making some assumptions there.
You see that line?
I'll throw
Jim?
another curveball into it. How about I stand up and point out some things?
Yeah,
If
get
you can
those.
read those numbers, Jim, I want your glasses.
So really, the biggest thing I'd like to call attention to is, our age balances residential. So this is for, August. When you look at these numbers, I start patting, customer service team and the efforts that they've been, going through and communicating out to our customers on the back, over and over and over again. Because when we look at these numbers, compared to last year this time, last year was total unpaid $137,740. Right now, we're at $23,567. So, it just goes to show, all of our efforts that we're doing as a utility and reaching out to our customers, and our automated messaging that we're sending to customers, our arrangements that we're making with customers, CRC, our call center, being able to help manage customers and answering any questions they have. So really, it's, the team as a whole, and everything that they're doing, helping our customers is proof right there that, customers are responding. They want to make right, they're, and we're understanding of the situation that they've had to endure. That's a big one right there, that I wanted to point out. Can you just scroll down a little bit more? For our commercial age balances, again, here's the numbers for August. So 6,909, compared to last year, 23,429. So again, this another effort, mainly driven by the board in helping, want to, redeploy money, towards helping, small businesses in our community. And so I think that's helped, those folks manage, under the restrictions that's been placed on them. And, again, folks are just being mindful that they're not trying to duck and dive, they want to do right. We've, put out there by our goodwill nature that we're willing to work with our customers and they're responding to that. So I think, when we see those numbers, that's really, representative of that. So, I appreciate that the board is standing behind that as well, or for standing behind it. So for some of our programs, that we, offer to our customers, neighbor to neighbor, this is, right now, hasn't had a whole lot of activity, mainly because there hasn't been much need for that. There's still been, light use funds, which is, federal assistance dollars that customers are able to leverage, that we work with the CAP office and they help with that. I do anticipate that, probably having an uptick as we go into the winter months, fall months. But again, so far it's at that level. Our Schedule 110, and 135 customers, these are, our senior citizen customers or disabled customers that, qualify, per the light heat guidelines, income guidelines. And so, customer-wise, it's gone up a little bit, 450, and 410. That's a slight uptick from last, several months. And really what that is again, communication by even our, CAP office, reaching out to customers and even for us, providing information to, our, partner, with CAP, to be able to say, hey, we have some customers that, you know, have expressed interest in, you know, needing help, and so we help, make that connection with the capital. Customer deposit returns, again, this is now an automated process, for our system, so this comes up on an automatic every month basis, so if the customer falls within our, policy guidelines, they automatically will get their deposit back. I do review, any of the potential businesses that may show up to that, and based off of the nature of the business, per our customer service policy is whether they get the deposit back, or if we just, if we keep it just because of, assurance to it. Right here, LIHEAP funds, as well as reclamation, you can see, again, that's not a real true depiction on the amount that has been actually pledged to customers. This is, it's kind of funny of what's been pledged and what's actually been paid out. So when I say that, you know, there's been a lot of, help that has helped reduce neighbor to neighbor, I think this is also just customers really not needing to lean on those dollars. And then over here, our small business assistance. Again, this is, us helping our small businesses in the community. I've got one more month of assistance, that we'll be providing to those businesses, and then the program, as it's designed now, was just probably gonna, not fall off, but lay idle. And then as we come into the winter months, maybe look at if we need to leverage, that program again, then we can certainly offer it to, our small businesses. So, and scroll down. In our surveying, we haven't had much movement on our surveying, and as of wiggled, we had one response in the last, in the last month. So again, response is a response, and, you know, we're still, getting feedback. And what it actually did was it wiggled our response to outage. It was actually a 5 that came in. Customer responded to, our response rate to the outage, that they must experience. So, they didn't leave any comments, but they, certainly felt that, we deserved a 5 out of, which is very satisfying. So, you scroll all the way up. So update, some things that customer service is currently doing, reviewing, kind of all the time, reviewing the customer service policy, making sure that, the practices and procedures are still applicable in what we're doing and are pertinent and, I guess make sense at the end of the day to our customers. And so we continue to do that. And then, I introduced, Melinda earlier. And so she's starting, her second day, and so she is, taken to the fire hose of information, and, really excited, to learn all things with our customer service. So, I've got one for energy management here. This is very fun. Free advertising. So a little bit different look, a little bit different feel. Initially, the motto is still under work, but guiding customers towards conserving energy today to enhance the resources of tomorrow. So it's something that energy management, obviously that's their mindset, and helping customers optimize the service we provide to them and making their living standards that much more comfortable and helping them with that. So really what I've done is you get the same information in your board packet. I just made it a little bit more visible and tried breaking it out. Our appliance rebates, this is it, and then in terms of total, again, it's just typical incentives that we offer to customers. Weatherization projects, this breaks it out in terms of the actual work or individual projects that customers may ask and we complete our part. So it breaks it out from attic to walls, windows, or exterior doors. Again, this is trying to maximize the comfort level for customers, and then allowing them to reap that much more benefits with energy savings in their bill. And then just slightly below here is just kind of breaking it out in terms of overall, individual, measures and, measures, I guess is a good way to put it, that we have completed in the last month. The big one to draw attention to is the commercial project. We have a couple, hotels that have actually, gone through the process of remodeling and updating, and, total between the two, businesses, there was over 75, heat pumps that were put in place, for that. So it's huge, really, when you think about, the assistance we were able to help those, entities in doing that work. And that just goes to show the testament of Travis and Caesar working with, not just our residential, but also our commercial customers, and making sure that, what we offer is also visible to them, and helping guide them through that as well.
Question. So the two, motels, Comfort Inn and Celilo Inn?
Yep.
Okay, I was looking through the finances and I saw the, you know, the
Yeah.
$22,000 and $25,000. What, huh?
Yep, that's.
Yeah, and I have, what is that?
And we have more coming.
Well, thank you, I understand what that is, and that's a great service for these folks.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
It helps, go ahead and scroll down a little bit. And this is just a graph, kind of all the work that is, energy management doing on a monthly basis. These are the kilowatt hour savings that gets reported to Bonneville Power, and then this is the year to date. So, you can see how certain months track up and down and up and down. So again, it's not that, on these lower lying months that work's not being done, it's just different kind of work that's being done. Because obviously when you're talking 70-something, you know, heat pump units getting put in, that'll drive the number up real quick. So quantity certainly on that one. Can you go ahead and scroll up? Okay, for updates, so I spoke briefly in the past, about the EE guide. It's entering into its final stages, for proofing with Rural Life Services, so that'll be an insert, going out. I'm hoping October if all things line up, at the worst case November. And really what this is the guide, making that information visible for customers and guiding them through what programs we have. Believe it or not, we have a segment of customers that just, are not, in front of a computer, and don't go to our website, and or don't come down to, the office. So, but they'll read that rule, like, you know, month after month. And so getting this information to them in an actual hard copy, I think will help guide them, and, probably we'll see an uptick in, requests, in the short order after that.
If I may interject here, just for a second, this is exactly what I was thinking of as I read through the board book and stuff. The things that we are doing are pretty impressive. And I think you guys have the responsibility to somehow capture that and get it to those groups. And there's different groups, like you said. Old guys read rural lights, the young kids and young people go to the computers and all those kinds of things, yeah. And so we're doing some really positive things, and it's up to you guys, the staff, to, you know, get that communication going. And a lot of them are aware of it, but a lot of them aren't. And so that's a real challenge.
Yeah,
That's my 2 cents anyway.
No, I appreciate that. Cause right before that, we're actually gonna hit a big marketing campaign, in terms of, it's kind of a seasonal thing that normally energy management does. And with the anticipation coming into kind of, not so desirable weather. And so we want to make sure that customers just get that information and try to guide them. So like you said, all the channels as much as possible that we can get that out there and to them. So that's what we're trying to accomplish with that as well before the guide comes out.
And regularly.
Yeah.
Whatever regularly means. But I think we just gotta keep hitting, you know, these groups and the things that we're doing. So pretty soon it becomes, well, it's kind of like an indoctrination, really. And once you get them in tune with these kinds of programs, you know, that's half the battle, I think.
And then just some other things, we are, coming into the close of the rate period, with BPA, soon to start another one, which, we finalized, a lot of existing projects with BPA, which kind of closes, the fiscal year and that previous rate period out, and then we'll start anew with BPA. And then one last thing, the Pure Power program we launched, does anybody raise their hands know what the Pure Power program?
I think He's one of them.
Exactly. So, did it really fail?
Your power page on the website?
Could you try going to the website? Yeah, that's where
I think there is.
Probably not whatever you have in Smart Sheet, but it's something.
So it's an existing program, really that a customer can, sign up to, in essence, purchase for an additional, fee, renewable energy, and how it was developed first, down there, okay, instead of ad hoc, right here, here you go. So, can you scroll down? Oh, that's it. Anyway, really what it is allowing customers the option to, have the option to be able to, for an additional cost, to buy, renewable energy, well, not buy specifically renewable energy, but in essence, the energy that is produced by wind power and or, clean hydro, and for a nominal fee, they can, add to the power mix, I guess you could say, that the PUD.
Is that similar to the green blocks that were available, remember 15 years ago?
Yeah.
Same thing.
We went through that, the district had that program then and offered them out.
Yeah.
And they were,
just take a little money off the people that wanna feel good?
Actual Rex are purchased and retired on behalf of. It's not a brighter green power, but it's I'll take those.
Okay, I'm gonna say, please take those. As it was,
I mean, it was hugely underwhelming,
Yeah.
the response.
Well,
you tell people they're gonna pay more.
Yeah,
at first, it was very, you know, lucrative, and a lot of people jumped in on it. And then, as time progressed, the numbers just kind of went down like this.
Part of that is, I think, the cycle of all things, with when it's bad, new, shiny, you know, people want to be part of it, and then part of it is also continuous communication to it, and investment back into it by utility supporters.
Well, and they also realized that 90% of what they were consuming
Right.
was green power
Yeah.
already.
So, the relaunch of it really is to, instead of, that being $5 for 200 kilowatt hour block, move that to $10 for 1,000 kilowatt hour block. But within that though, we're also not just, I guess you could say, promoting wind energy in terms of the overall energy mix, but it's also promoting our hydro, plants to that. So on an annual basis, what we'll do then is, customer can select whether it be wind or hydro, and then Kurt's like, oh, I don't know. And retire those renewable energy credits on behalf of the customer. And we already do that for I guess you could say the power that we receive from Bonneville. A certain portion of that already has wind energy credits. Kurt could probably speak a little bit more fully to that.
How much time do I have?
Whichever flavor of green power you want.
Yes.
We'll sell it to you.
We'll sell it to you.
It's great, it's giving what we have, polishing it off a little bit, and we might get it out.
Some of what we'll sell to you already have, but that's no
Yeah.
big deal.
How much you have, we'll tell you which we'll sell.
Just pay us more.
There is a percentage of our customer base that wants as crispy, clean, and green as you can get it.
Yeah, more power to them.
Yep, and we'll support them.
We'll take care of it.
Yep. So,
this is that effort, listening to the customer's feedback, looking at what we can do, renewing it, and offering it back up. That's what I got. Any questions? Oh, and don't forget, 27th, 28th, WEI annual meeting. I will be, personally, will be presenting with another group virtually for a capstone presentation.
Thank you.
Emerging leaders.
Yeah.
That's for his benefit. He's been working very hard.
Good.
Okay, now the GM.
Good evening. I will not take much time, because everyone did a very excellent job covering everything that we have going on right now at the district. I will echo my personal experience with our energy management group. They did an assessment of my personal home and just had one of our contractor community come do some new insulation in the attic. So it'll be nice and toasty this winter is the goal. And, yes, there was a target-rich environment for things that I could do to make my home more energy efficient, and we're doing some of those. Just reconfirming, Public Power Council, the annual meeting will be virtual this year, and so that will make all of our remaining association meetings this year virtual for the rest of 2021, and then in 2022, PPC will start monthly virtual and quarterly in person. So our trips to Portland will be less if they ever start again, when they ever start again, and that's probably a good thing. And lastly, I'm not sure if this had made it around yet. Blake Weathers of NRU fame is transitioning to the Public Power Council. He's the new director of power supply for PPC and has departed NRU. So as we have conversations as part of the updated strategic plan, when I bring it to you at the end of this year, we'll think about what our future membership needs are as we think about our organization and our growth and our plans for the future, specifically related to what both Kurt and Chris shared with us tonight. We don't look the same as a typical load following customer, so we should understand that when we think about our associations and where we spend our time. And that's it.
That's a good thing. So we have a couple of young gentlemen now that have seen how we function and participated with us.
Yes.
So that's a positive thing.
Yes. New blood's always good, and ensuring that our resources are being met and our needs are being met through our trade association is why we do these periodic reviews of where we're spending our time and money, and I think it's just a good time to do that as well.
Yeah.
Okay, was there anything from the general counsel? You're not on the.
No, sir. I, actually, for the board's edification, I, requested that the general manager take me out of that list, based on the fact that if I had something, I would let, the office know beforehand so it could be on there. And number two, I've never been particularly shy about pointing things out to you.
We are well over there.
Without being on the agenda, so.
I'll second that motion.
Aye.
And that predated us.
I think it predated me, which shows how old it is.
Okay, new business. Resolution 24, 2021.
I believe Harvey is going to power
Hey.
on.
All right, I'm still trying to recover from the fact that Jim Foster's shy, but I was taken aback and I thought, what? Yes. Anyway, I have before the board right now a resolution that would enable district staff, namely the general manager, the assistant general manager, and the CFO, to be able to sign and manage letters of credit related to purchase power agreements. Delegate that authority that currently rests with the board. Those signatures need to go through the board in our credit facility with Bank of the West in order to have any change, any alteration. This request is just moving that authority to the general manager, one of three signatories make a change to a letter of credit agreement, and that would be, again, the general manager, assistant general manager, and the CFO. The background to this, the 2-second background to it, is that as we enter into non-federal purchases, purchase power agreements, a lot of companies will require a credit assurance, usually in the form of a letter of credit, and that gives them protection in the event of a lack of performance in the agreement. As we do more, and we're looking to be doing more and more non-federal purchases on behalf of our customers. And one of the key attributes of being in compliance with those letters of credit is a timely change if called upon. So as market conditions change, power prices change, that affects the exposure to the counterparty, who could in turn request an increase to that letter of credit. And the key issue here is that turnaround time from the time of the request to the time that has to be executed is in my conversations, it's usually around 48-hour period. So it's a fairly quick turnaround. Failure to make that adjustment with that letter of credit constitutes a failure in the contract and the agreement, and could result in the termination agreement or some harm to the district. Because that is a tight turnaround, we're asking that get moved to staff to be able to quickly execute that, rather than convene the board to be able to make those types of changes. We've never had an instance like that. Our agreements have been fairly, we've had plenty of time to be able to do that. And when we had that type of agreement with Chelan County PUD, we currently have a letter of credit that'll expire at the end of this month with Northwest Intergovernmental Energy Services. But as we have to go out and procure large amounts of power with various non-federal entities for our customers, that picture could change. And so what this is doing is just setting that structure so that we can timely respond in the event that we have to do that. Any questions from the board on this?
I don't think so. It certainly makes sense to me. That's what you guys are hired for, so we will let you do your job. So is there a motion to accept the 24-2021?
I move to accept resolution 24-28-21.
Is there a second? Got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I'll just state, if we ever actually have to do it, we would communicate immediately to the board as part of normal course of business.
That is
part of our control. But again, this would be a rare event that it would have to happen, and if it did, we would ensure to communicate promptly.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Passed unanimously.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night, Harvey.
Enjoy, Harvey.
Good morning.
Where is he? In Iceland?
What?
Is he?
Okay, board reports. Opuda.
I
right,
was
let's go, guys.
on vacation, Connie, she's doing it. Oh, she was the alternate.
Okay. The open meeting of August 20th, Janelle Romaine discussed the updated COVID mandate. September 20th will be a special session to approve the map for redistricting. This will begin the process and include virtual public comment sessions. Oregon has increased in population by 400,000. Discussion turned to the Outage conference in September. It was discussed that only 35 members had committed to attend. Mark said the deadline to cancel was Monday, August 23rd, only giving a few more days for registration. It was the consensus of the group to reschedule for September 2022 in Astoria with Alaska 9 posting. Central Lincoln PUD said they would get out of the rotation if needed to. Some reason for that was precedent or something.
To keep the rotation, it's the same.
Yeah. Everyone agreed on keeping the next monthly the OPUDA meeting for September 24th. And that would be the best. Continued discussion about changing OPUDA's meeting time and place. Some possibilities, changing the meeting day to Thursday instead of Friday, and moving the meeting to a conference room at the Grand Hotel. We will continue to discuss this in the next meeting. And I will, they did send out a survey, I don't know, if they emailed us a survey with 2 questions on it. So I think a report on that next meeting. SEAO is planning to visit every PUD in person. And Bonneville employees will continue to work from home until October 11th. Financially, Bonneville is ending the year well. $339 million purchase power and $7 million in transmission power.
Okay.
Thank you, Madare.
Any other business to be brought up?
I have one to report. I'm a superintendent at the county fair of several things. And some of the stuff I'm in charge of is in the open class building where the community booths are. And I had the opportunity to visit with Kate Willis from the South Wasco Alliance. And she was very appreciative of the grant that we gave them, and we had a good talk. So just wanted to report back to the board that she just wanted me to send word that she was appreciative of the board's support.
Okay, super, good to hear.
And if I can add to that, the Civic and Tri Valley check will be cut this week, and they are very appreciative of everything as well. And Kate did want me to pass that along as well. So Kate's project won't start until next year, so we have rebudgeted her grant amount for 2022, and the remaining 3 projects will hopefully be funded now. I'm still waiting to hear back from the Delaware Association.
Okay.
Still on the tugboat.
Future meetings. What type of discussion do we need on that?
Oh, well, we have this,
Paperwork.
I just wanted to give the board a quick update. I had received an email and a phone call from our county clerk. She was interested in whether or not we were going to be redistricting based on the 2020 census. And so Jake Kellogg, our GIS man, has been working on that. And so I'm going to look at the prior files when we updated by ordinance our 5 service territories, or our 5 subdivisions, back in 2013. And then I'll be talking with Jim as well. So Paul did it the last time 10 years ago, or, well, not quite 10 years ago. And so Jake and I are working on that. I'll be in conversation with other managers in the district, but that will be coming forth sometime in the future. Jake thought maybe you might be interested in looking at the boundaries prior to it coming before the board as a public hearing for consideration. Jim's kind of shaking his head. So we will do what is necessary, and the clerk was hopeful that we would do that before the election next year for the new representatives that we will, Oregon will be having.
So, Jim, what would happen if the redistricting moves a director out of their district?
Then they no longer qualify to be a director. And I've done the research on it, and 3 out of the 5 of you are in deep trouble. No, I actually, you're safe, great. I did mention that to Kathy, and Kathy says at first blush, we're all of you are okay.
Yeah.
Okay? Connie may have to move a couple of more houses,
I
but that's
know.
okay.
You're safe. But it wasn't doing well. Yeah, back when Clay Smith and Barbara Nagel was here and they were seeking re-election, they had a really difficult time walking door to door because of some of the boundaries. So he has been able to shore up some of that, more following certain lines and stuff. So Wayne, I think Wayne and Roger is probably going to have the most impact. Connie, your house is definitely it's not on the border, it's inside the boundary. So there's more to come, but like I said, staff is working on that, and so it just depends. Jake says the maps are different than what we received back in 2013 or whatever, the year we had received that. but, so some of
This
the.
is actually a really important thing. Only one of the members of the board remembers, because there was only one of them here, that the board was replacing a board member who I think had resigned as opposed to dying, and and those are the two ways that you have to deal with it. And they interviewed, I think, 3 or 4 people and selected the one, and the one said, absolutely, I'd be happy to do it. And Paul Titus, I think, was the one that looked on the map and discovered that the guy didn't live in the particular district. And so Dan Williams got appointed, which was good for the district, but it is an important, project that needs to be done every census.
Yeah, and the board will have to adopt that by ordinance, which requires public hearing.
Yeah.
Okay. Any miscellaneous information?
I just have a comment. Roger, when I went back through and read, what did I read? The information that you sent to us about our positions and things in utility. I've got a whole bunch of notes, just little tiny things and 1 or 2 that I think are semi-important. But, let me know and I'll come in and share that with you.
Great.
On the organizational chart?
No, it's on our mission statements and all those kinds of things.
The strategic plan updates.
Thank you, I couldn't think of it, strategic plan.
Perfect, thank you very much.
Yeah. I won't be as good as one of our ex-board members, because she was excellent.
Outstanding. Thank you very much.
Okay, we
Starting to sound
will
like Elvis.
go into executive session, so people are excused.
Including.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you. Have a good evening.
And that includes you, Roger.
Just want to make sure it gets secured appropriately.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
Take our mask off.
See you later.
I hate it.
Connie, could you, or one of you, could you